Hey everybody, John Wolpert here with the for yet another edition of the Baseline Show. Tight little crew today. We've just got four people: Mark Haddle, Martin Kjaer, and Sonal Patel. Because we're going to talk about some things that Sonal's been working on and Martin's been working on, and want to kind of focus on that. In fact, I think this will be Sonal's debut interviewing session. So I'm very excited. Mark and I are just going to sit by and heckle as Sonal talks to Martin. Lots going on. I'll be honest, my days and nights and last night, most of last night, into the wee hours, working on starting this new company. Actually, we're spinning out two companies out of the Baseline Lab here at Consensus Mesh. And there's more to come. I got news today from a pretty cool enterprise operation that is doing baselining. They're like, "We love baselining," and I'm like, "What? I didn't even know who you guys were. What were you guys doing?" And they're like, "Yeah, it took us a long time, but now we're really into it. We're going. We got all this problem solved." And I'm like, "Wow, great!" So some of the tools, technologies, and products that will be coming out of Consensus, I think. Will it be exciting in 2022? I think our budget plan, Sonal, as you know, says that we'll be after we launch Tree Trunk. There's plenty more. There's two more things right on the heels of that, right? So stay tuned for more fun. That's all I've got to say. Mark Haddle, you got any pithy words before we jump in with Sonal?
Oh, pithy words! I always have pithy words, but. One thing that we're really excited about is, we are launching the first iteration of the Baseline Protocol website.
Let me it's ready.
And we're ready. We're going, and this is one thing that the enablement team has been working on, along with other different areas of the community and stuff. Each making their contributions, and so we are now ready to. We have now released it into the ether, as we would say, release it into the world.
I was always fine with the old website because to me, it was boring, and our whole theme was boring is beautiful. Yeah. So it was beautifully boring, the website. But it did its job. It still does its job. You would think in this day and age, managing signups for, open communities would be easier than, and something you wouldn't have to use something older, like I think we use Sign Up Genius or something on it. But and you'd think that would just be like out of the box, something you could do with like 100 different API services. It's actually not. It's pain to just be able to handle and custodian people's information and their signups and being able to communicate with them and all that. But it did its job, and I think that it's appropriate this year that we do. The 2022 is simple as beautiful, right? Simple as beautiful is kind of what I've been saying a lot, and I think that the new website really looks a lot simpler and cleaner and nicer, and I think it's easier to get to what you want to be doing. So well done.
We still have a couple of areas on there that are still under construction, but we definitely didn't want those to impede the launch, and so. Stay tuned and check this site because it's going to be steadily improving over the next month. And as we get more input from the community, we'll be doing a little bit of, refining and stuff like that. And so, the main goal here is to, have just someone that has a casual interest. Maybe they heard about it at a meetup or something like that, and they're like, what is this thing? And so this is a way that you can have, both the technical audience, but especially the non-technical audiences, to say, this is, this is a solution set that is, doesn't require an enormous capital investment, doesn't require a lot of, development time, and this is a way that you can get up and, baseline depending on your requirements. You can actually get up baselining in a fraction of the time that it would be, from another solution, and still have all the functionality.
Wait till you see what's coming from Gnark. Make it even easier.
I love the little teases.
I love the teases. Yeah, everybody gives me trouble about this. Like, are you announcing an announcement? And I'm like, maybe, I don't care. I'm not a marketing person. I'm just some dude that talks about stuff. So yeah, that's cool. I like the idea. When does it go live, Sonal?
It just did, actually, right before this call.
Dope. What?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll share my screen really quickly.
I have put the link in the chat.
Yep. So this is our new website. As Mark mentioned, we'll iterate as we go.
The lighter theme now. I thought it was that darker theme.
It's actually, you can change it.
Yeah. Fancy.
So I will say that I think our website's still pretty simple because as I was prototyping this design, I was using a lot of thoughts I was getting based on community members inquiring and things they just directly wanted to be pointed to. So although it looks way more complex, it's still the same functionality, just a little more detail or pointers to the right places. And then this Get Baselined page is actually new. And by working with Oasis, the PGB members, and others in the community, we're going to start having companies that are sponsors who can provide baselining services, either products, developer tools, things like that. They can be listed here on our site to actually get in touch with companies who want to find out more about baselining. So that's a new functionality that will hopefully be very useful in the near future to the group.
Should be a pretty good reason to become a sponsor.
Yep. Details and information to become a sponsor, resources. And we noted here that this is under construction as we're improving documentation and resources at the time, but everything can be found here.
The starter kit is in the that's kind of interesting, right? I'm excited. That's not out yet, right? But
almost.
So you guys have been working for like a couple months on like if I'm at a solutions company like TCS or Accenture, and I want to convince my boss to start a baselining practice, and I want to convince clients that they should be getting into this stuff. You need a slideshow, right? Gotta have a slideshow. Don't have a slideshow, you don't, and it's not real. So I think that I'm so excited to see that.
And then get involved with some information about our open source teams, since we always want new members to join the community. Our blog, which we'll be utilizing a lot more, we're going to have a process where the leads of our open source teams, so the core devs, the outreach, they can submit a form and they will be prompted to every 2 weeks to give an update on what the group is working on. It'll be added to the blog. We're going to try and automate that process, but we'll have some categories and filters here in the future as well. And then our about section, more about baseline, but that's pretty much it. Our simple new website.
And even more powerful on the simple side is that what's really not simple was getting new content on the dang website. That was super, because of the way we had it run, it was super hard. And so it really slowed us down on just, when you get to the end of the day and you've taken care of like 500 problems, the last one you want to do is write the release on something that people should know about. So I'm glad that that's easier now. Who did the work? So we should give them a shout out.
I designed the website, and boy, he was a friend of Jack Waring's and knows a lot about baseline and stuff in the community. He voluntarily developed the website for us, and he was a pleasure to work with.
Pleasure.
Yep, his friend. Yep. And boy was amazing. He just actually knew the content, which helped a lot. So if I phrased something a little off or just needed another set of eyes, he was always just iterating and making updates or sending suggestions to us as well. So it was truly a community effort. And his work was just beautiful. And he's offered to help us continuously update the website for the foreseeable future, unless we transfer to another platform. But shout out to Boy, and we're super lucky to have had his help. He dedicated a lot of time and effort to this, and my lack of design and web design skills did not make it an easy task for him. I was just like typing notes. I was like, I think this should look like this, where I feel like this when I see it. And he probably was like, this is a lot of work for me, but he was so nice and easy to work with.
Do we have a Twitter handle for him or something we can?
Yes, we do. We will post his Twitter and tag him on LinkedIn shortly.
Yeah, throw that at me and I'll put it up on the content thing. Well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty great. What else have we got? I guess so there's a lot more news coming out of. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, one thing that we, kept top of mind while we were putting the website together is, you want to engage the casual user, and we want to encourage them. It's like, if you want to go ahead and undertake this project, don't just release your development team onto the code base and have them play around with it and start to build. Engage the community. We have done quite a few laps around the track, and we can compress that development time that you're looking at just by getting involved. And I think that you would find yourself that, once you're up and running, that you're going to remain involved, just because just how well it all, fits together. So not only is it, a technique and a process, it's not a code, it's not a coin, it's not a platform, it's not a product, but it's something that, is going to make everyone's lives easier, or at least make their jobs less difficult. So.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Well, I'm really excited. I mean, you can feel it bubbling up. I'm getting more and more. It's just so you cannot, I've said it before, you cannot throw a rock in business or really any affair where you've got more than one legally separate entity. And, everybody is being forced to coordinate more and more with everybody else. And nobody wants their data getting out in the clear, even to their partners. So what do? It's so freaking obvious.
We've gotten
this
a lot
approach
of,
and others. I mean, this isn't the only way to solve that problem, but it's a pretty good pattern.
I've gotten a lot of interest from the security community, a lot of CISOs and stuff, because just the basic, premise that my data stays at rest. So it is so much easier to secure than data in motion. And, if I'm having to sit there and reconcile through my normal processes, I'm at least going to allow some leakage. And I don't want that. And so this is a way that I can maintain my systems record, my, existing security architecture. I am only proving, a data set with a counterparty,
right?
Proving that consistency.
Yeah, we just need more and more circuit tools and more ways of just kind of plug and playing and saying, okay, I need to prove that this number is above that number.
Well, and a lot of times when you're looking at a new framework or looking to implement a new solution, it's really common that, you're going to have a lot of people saying, yeah, my security guys aren't going to like that. Well, that doesn't exist with baseline. True.
Okay. With that, Sonal, Martin, it's your show. Why don't you have at?
All right, cool. So we have Martin here, who recently joined the baseline community and has already been a huge asset by providing his experience and knowledge in the space he works in. So we wanted to feature him on our show today to kind of explain what brings him to the baseline community and where he sees it going, and just get his feedback and thoughts. So Martin, thanks for joining us. If you'd like to start by introducing yourself.
Thanks for having me. Maybe I'll start with some quick facts. So my name is Martin, as you mentioned. I'm, as you can hear from my accent, I'm not in the US. It's evening already here in Europe. I'm based in Vienna. I did my master in business informatics and my bachelor as well. And within the last years, I started focusing more and more on blockchain tech. I also wrote my thesis about quantitative analysis about MakerDAO. So I looked at the transactional data which can be found on the Ethereum mainnet, and did an analysis of that. And within the last years, I think I'm not quite sure when it was. Today we were thinking when it was. I think it was 2020 when the baseline protocol launched. Is that right? I think it was in spring. I stumbled upon a blog post where it said like, yeah, there are some people, some companies. I think it was Ernst and Young. I followed John Brody already. Paul Brody, sorry. Paul Brody already. And so I think it was on his Twitter or somewhere where I found like the blog posts. Here we are launching this protocol. It's called the baseline protocol. And I was like, hey, what's that? That's
yeah, John Brody's our son.
Paul Wolpert.
Yeah, yeah, that's even cooler.
And so yeah, I found the blog post and I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I was since I was I think since I understood the idea behind Ethereum, which is in my point of view that you can do general computation in a trusted way. That was the new thing compared to Bitcoin, but also compared to centralized servers. You could now trust that something computed in the way that you wanted to have it computed. And since I understood this vision, I was like, okay, that there are a lot of use cases, and I was not like, I like the whole DeFi thing, but I always thought that there's probably much more. And especially from the enterprise perspective, I was actually quite convinced that there should be something. And also I read an article once which mentioned there was like a theory which stated that there will most likely blockchains, if they're going to be adopted in the future, they will most likely indirectly lead to some kind of standardization. And that sounded interesting to me because it made sense, because if you're like syncing things over a platform that you can trust, and you need some kind of standard if you're synchronizing with this kind of platform, at least if you're not the only one, or you and your partner are not the only one using that. So I was just like wondering how long it takes if until some kind of specification or standard evolves. And I was quite surprised that it didn't took so long. And when I started looking into the baseline protocol, I was more and more convinced that this is probably the thing I was looking for. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to look really deep into it because I was still focused on my master thesis. But on my institute, I'm working at the Technical University of Vienna now. At the institute where I was also writing my thesis, there were some people, or one of my colleagues, working specifically on using blockchains and exploring how blockchains can be used in an enterprise context. More specifically, we are doing in research, or he was doing at that time. He was alone. He was doing that research project where we were exploring how the blockchain can be used in facility management. And he was exploring use cases which required some trust. And he didn't stumble upon the baseline protocol yet. But I was speaking to him, and he was describing me his problem, and where he's like thinking around and trying to think about how we could structure that. And I was like, have you heard about the baseline protocol? And I was like, no, let's what's that? And he looked into it, and it was like, that's exactly the thing I needed. And yeah, that was actually how it started. And then I finished my thesis, and he was like, yeah, I need someone who helps me and all that. And yeah, that's how I started there. I just started a couple of months ago. But now I had the time to read into the standard, the version 1. And yeah, it's actually quite impressive what has been done in the last years. I'm really interested to learn more. I think we are still in the beginning. We prototyped a little bit. We are using the provide stack in a first prototype implementation, or at least playing around with it. And actually today we met with Stefan Rauch. I think you know him. He's also based in Vienna. And it was a really good and long and interesting conversation where we tried to explore where we are coming from, like from the university perspective, and where he's focused on like more use cases or customer perspective, especially around SAP. And I think we will work something out in the future. I think there could be some things we could work on together. It's quite cool.
Awesome. You're moving fast in the baseline community. You're already meeting so many people. It's awesome. But thanks for sharing with us how you got interested in baseline and how you can tie it directly back to the work you're doing. So you mentioned the facility management lens that you guys are working through your work. And how do you see baseline applying directly to the use case of that multi-party coordination that's going on?
I think there are quite some processes actually that are happening there. The one that we picked out is one about maintenance. So in a building, you have a lot of things, facilities like elevators, for example, that are that have to be maintained on a regular basis. And in many cases, you also have some legal requirements on that, like the legal body requires that you're doing a maintenance, I don't know, once a year or however. And we picked this use case out from many others because it seemed interesting to us, because there are not only two parties involved, right? Because there's the owner of the building who has to fulfill the legal requirements. Then there's the company which does the maintenance, and then there are other people involved which actually want that this maintenance happens as expected. Like I said, there's the state dictates you in a way that you have to do that because of security reasons. It could also be that when you're selling that building, that the new buyer of that building wants to see that all the maintenance required in the last years has been done properly. And for this specific use case, we believe a blockchain is valuable because in general, what you could do if there's a point in time where someone says like, okay, have you done all that maintenance? Show that to me. If it's not digitalized, you will have it in some kind of paperwork. But what you cannot prove, doesn't matter if you have it digital or not, what you cannot prove up until now is that those certificates have really been created at the time it says on the document, because like it's not really, it's most likely not the case. But what you could theoretically do is you go to the guy who maintains the elevators and you say like, hey, you know, we got that company which wants to buy our building. We need like protocols of the last 10 years which prove that all our elevators have been maintained properly. And theoretically this guy could like just create all those certificates. So we believe that this is a really good use case for blockchain in general, because it needs some provable timestamp. So from this perspective alone, it's not completely sure yet if we need zero knowledge proofs from our perspective. Zero knowledge proof are like a very specific method of proving that that something happened. Actually, a method where you can prove that something happened in a specific manner, but not without revealing all data involved in that method. Just it followed some kind of rule. And in that case, we did like the use case that I just described. I think we might even just use a hash or something. And this is also.
Martin, could you just say more about that? Like with the hash, I mean, you almost you need very little, right? If you're trying to just prove that two counterparties that know each other are, that they signed, digitally, they just signed hash, right? It's well-known technique, and technically you're not going to get out of sync because you can always, you'd have to go and dig it up from each other's, respective thing. I think the nice thing is being able to put that in something that's addressable and easily found. There's utility in that, and that's where, common for CCSMs are useful, but especially public ones where you can then address them and say, okay, I've got an address for this, this signature, this hash, and now when you see it, do something. That's why we call it a magic bus.
Mm-hmm.
But say more about, are these just two-party arrangements where both parties have all the clear text? Are there any cases where they need to prove anything to each other, kind of like the battleship game where, you're not supposed to see my battleships are, but I need to prove to you that you missed when you called E4, or where there's a third party where you've got two parties that don't want to share their data and some attribute of that data to somebody else, but they need that somebody else to do something. Is that part of your life?
Yeah, that's actually the point where we are right now. So the use case that I just described is the one that we picked out because it was one of the most easiest, because it has like it needs some kind of verifiability from a third party, which requires a blockchain then, or which is a good use case for a blockchain then. The part that you described where you need a zero knowledge proof, this is actually something we are thinking about. Like we are still evaluating our use cases and speaking also to industry customers right now. Like we want to dig a little bit deeper into their point of view. And you're completely right. If there is some specific thing you want to prove, like for example, if we stay with that use case, if you want to prove that that the maintenance has some attribute, like let's say you have a list of trusted maintainers, like there are like 10 companies that do maintenance for elevators, and let's say those comply to the baseline protocol, and you have you wanna create a proof in a blockchain on the CCSM. You wanna leave a proof there that one of the maintainers has actually done a maintenance on one of your elevators. Then in that specific case, if you don't want to give all the information away, like which company exactly, because maybe you don't want to, because that's like.
Is that something that's important to people? I mean, that they are, is that, I mean, the thing about this is that it's not for everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, like all the data of this show or of this video, we're not going to put that under zero knowledge, right? We want people to see it.
True.
So there's lots of cases where, there's probably more cases where you don't need to hide anything, right?
True. Yeah, that's actually the thing why we are really interested from an academic perspective on the baseline protocol, because we think, at least I couldn't find it until now, and if we look at the discussions that happening in the BLIP1 working group, which is about creating measurements where we need zero knowledge proofs and where we need the CCSM anchoring for specific work steps. If we look at it at the ongoing discussion, I think it makes sense to dive a little bit deeper into that, because
you guys in your line, as I recall, there's a lot to do with surety bonds and that sort of thing, right? You've got project management, and you've got to be. And Mark Heddle, by the way, knows a lot about this. I think that's where it might be interesting, where you need, where there's a financial result that has to occur, when by as a result of some set of counterparties in a big construction project or something like that, maintenance project, where they have to do some things right. And yeah, then there's lots of data that they don't want to be pouring out to other counterparties, but they need those counterparties to do stuff. I think that's kind of an interesting space. And you know who else knows a lot about this is Natharanjan, who is also a part of the baseline community. He's on Slack. You can find him easy. He's got a whole project around project management, baselining project management, effectively.
Sounds actually valuable to us. Yeah.
I still think I still see the ZKP process being relevant there, and the fact that what we're helping these companies do is help them ultimately kind of achieve their centralized data strategies. A lot of these organizations, are seeking to continue to consolidate and centralize their data into one single source of truth. And what we can do as ZKPs is still do that, allow them to achieve that, and still in that process, still obfuscate the sensitive information that is most important, and be able to execute those processes, and then as a result of that, have that be something that's right for the tokenization of it, and then right for DeFi. And then once you get to the DeFi side, you're talking about these different type of asset yields that you can gain as a result of it that you hadn't been able to in the past, which is just a differentiation in and itself.
Tokenization, as in hashes, are tokens of information.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to pack it into an ERC 721, but hey, it's all good.
I'd say some relevant value of, whether that's an invoice or, something in that regard. And from an invoice perspective, relative to maintenance, like that's, certainly applicable there. There's obviously that output of the maintenance that was done. And in that same way, you're able to tokenize the output of that as well. And in the same way, Martin, we've been focused on doing it from a ServiceNow perspective. We continue to work closely with the ServiceNow team, and from a service management perspective, there's a lot of applicable use cases to what you're mentioning there, and how we're intending to leverage it as we continue to move forward. And to add a little bit more to it, that's where I've always been so excited about the baseline opportunity relative to the connected edge and the IoT automation that can be enabled from some of the, maybe not like compliance and certification on an elevator, but like in some of the other kind of manufacturing type processes, or like service management related inquiries. I think it's highly applicable and going to be a really good opportunity as well. Once you can tap into
that's what I like
automation.
about these different. The community is pretty diverse, and you've got sort of the steady, pragmatic German team, with ServiceNow, Unibright guys. They're very pragmatic. They're like, hey, this is what customers want. This is what they're asking for, right? And then you've got Jack and Kyle and those guys going, let's go crazy. Let's do, here's the vision. And it's all valuable. It's all relevant, and it's all part of the story. So I think that's kind of cool. So back to you. I'm sorry.
You're good. Martin, I just wanted to let you respond to the comments that were made based on your application of baseline to your use case. If there's anything you wanted to respond to.
Well, in general, I think it's quite interesting from our perspective to hear the ongoing discussions about use cases, about where you need that technology. I think we are still early in understanding what baseline will be about in the future. I think there are so many new. I think there are many new use cases, especially when it's about zero knowledge proofs, because like if you understand the concept behind zero knowledge, you can like there's a Cambrian explosion of new things you could do with that. On the other hand, you have like you guys mentioned, now you have those pragmatic people from coming from an SAP background that have like some work steps that need to be synchronized across companies, where you're those people, I have the feeling, as far as I understood it thus far, is they, like especially the customers which are seeking some kind of baseline or blockchain, CCSM anchoring, whatever. They're just looking for cheap possibilities to sync their data, basically, very simply spoken, and finding the difference between what the baseline protocol is now and where they are coming from, and then finding out what is appropriate in which use case is a really interesting topic, and I think we are happy to continue contributing to BLIP1, where all those things are specifically discussed, I think.
Awesome. And tell us a little more about the BLIP1 work. We're gonna feature the group in a coming meeting, but that group's been quickly growing. There's some other new community members who are taking part in that. So what's happening in that group, and give us a little update if you can.
Yeah, maybe a little disclaimer. We just joined this working group.
Yeah.
I watched the last call, and we joined the call, the previous call, and the last call was just yesterday. The blip itself is about defining and finding measurements, like I said, where a CCSM or a zero knowledge proof is necessary in the case of a single work step, but it might also be a whole workflow. So there are different possibilities to look at this. I think it's, like I said, it's quite a broad, like there are so many aspects you could take into account. At least from our point of view, there's like the aspect: is there a need to prove something has happened, or is there a need that something specific has happened, or like there's so. Like I said, like you could just use a hash in the signature, which is not what is in the standard right now. And the blip is actually discussing if this definition, like there has to be currently in the standard, it says that there has to be zero knowledge proof created on each work step. And the discussion is now, might there be, like, for example, a list of work steps that will just be signed offline, and then we create the last work step, which creates a zero knowledge proof of the previous work steps that they have all completed. And out of this zero knowledge proof, we could, for example, create a new token or whatever. Just as an example.
What would you use the token for?
Depending on the use case.
Yeah.
Like, so I think I took it from the Unibright guys where I heard it once. You could tokenize an invoice. I think it's widely used now.
Yeah, but if you put it in a ERC 721 or something, that's a pretty fat package for a pretty small piece of information. It's pretty expensive to do it that way. It'd be like sending. It'd be like using FedEx for every time you want to send an email. Right.
True.
I would say that because right now people are starting to want to issue digital tokens for, say, event tickets, and right now we still have a little bit more work to do, because I think
the verified credentials people are like, you don't really need a token for that. Verified credential works just fine. Much simpler. It's kind of like the JSON to a token's XML.
And partly the way we see mitigate costs is with the cost to those transactions is by doing the ZK and ZKPs.
Well, that doesn't cheapen it up a lot. Those ZK rollups on chain are pretty expensive.
I'd say that we're finding solutions as to how to offset that pretty effectively and to make that not a very significant cost.
Oh yeah, but I mean, FedEx reducing the cost of packages from $20 to $15 is still $15 per email.
True.
I don't know. I mean, bear in mind, I'm starting a token company, so I'm a little nuanced on the subject, but I like challenging people on this particular topic, because I think, it doesn't do our community any good to blindly go, oh, let's tokenize this, right? We got to think it through. Like, what is the best tool for the job? Focus on the problem.
True. Yeah, we are very much sure that like the use case that you described, putting an NFT on the mainnet, is probably not going to be required, or like it doesn't make really sense, right? It depends on how much value you're tracking, but creating a $15 proof is not the thing we want.
Well, even then, if you say, well, let's put it on L2, which is not unlike what we said stupidly in the enterprise 5-6 years ago, when we said, hey, we don't want to put stuff on the public blockchain, let's make private blockchains, which was kind of not my best idea ever. But the L2 is still a singleton, which means it's still if it gets popular, it's going to fill up, and you're going to have noisy neighbor problems again, and you're back to pretty expensive basic infrastructure. It still strikes me. I still remember when I was in telecom in the 90s, and the marginal cost of placing a phone call, became almost zero, right? And we saw IP telephony coming. We were like, hey, let's just eliminate the tariffs. Let's just make it a flat fee, and nobody will matter. And it did. It put off IP telephony. I think the banks couldn't do that, right? The marginal cost of doing a bank transaction technologically is close to zero. They charge you because they can, because that's a policy decision. Just like it was a policy decision for us in telecom to charge you, 10 cents a minute to call grandma in the next town, right?
Sure.
Change the policy. Technology is not transactionally expensive. Blockchains are transactionally non-zero expensive, cheaper or more expensive, but always something, fundamentally forever. It seems like a bad use of them. Not to say that we shouldn't use blockchains. I work for a blockchain company, kind of into blockchains, but use them correctly.
Yeah. And I think if like this is a really philosophical discussion now, I think, because you're right, definitely. And I think especially zero knowledge proofs are not at really not where we want them. Like the efficiency,
not on chain,
but
off chain, we're using them
yes,
really nicely. And by the way, a little shout out to Envision blockchain. They are killing it in zero knowledge work. A really good team, and they've been building an off chain baselining functionality for zero knowledge circuits, recursive ones. All of it's off chain, and then you're putting the proofs in our case right now we're putting them on IPFS, but ultimately you can put it on a CCSM too. But the cost is more than setting up a traditional set of compute, but it's not crazy like trying to run it on trying to run zero knowledge on chain like Matter Labs or ZK, which is good stuff too. But I think that we often get distracted by the use of zero knowledge proofs as a way to do private stuff on a blockchain. That's cool, super great, or to do scaling on a blockchain. But now you're combining two inefficient systems into one, right? It's like the Reese's peanut butter cup of inefficiency, right? You've got blockchains that are by design inefficient, and now you've got ZK, which is by design inefficient, and you're trying to do those two things, and there's a cost to every opcode. Pretty neat trick if you can make that cheap. But if I'm just running zero knowledge circuits off, on traditional compute, it's still computationally more expensive, certainly in setup and doing it's not on validation necessarily, but it's still setting up is expensive. But we don't really notice it. It's a little more expensive on the back end, but it doesn't break the back.
But this is exactly where the blip one discussion comes in. Like asking the question, is it really necessary to create a zero knowledge proof, which has to be on chain for every update in a process? Or can we use aggregates, or can we use other techniques?
I think the one thing about aggregates that is interesting is to me, the what really punches up the whole baseline approach is sometimes zero knowledge, sometimes not. That's fine. But it's the magic bus factor. It's saying, I need you to listen to a spot, which is just a standard distributed systems design pattern, right? That's just a loose coupling pattern, right? Instead of you having to jack in and punch a hole in my firewall and listen to my system, I'm going to drop an event on this thing that we're all looking at. And when you see it, you get to do something. In this case, if it's a zero knowledge proof, it looks like nonsense. If you throw some chaff in there, nobody notices. I mean, nobody's like, well, that may be a thing that references something, or it may be completely fake proof, right? So, you can really hide, you can destroy all the information that's showing up there, except for to the person that's in the know, where you said, hey, take a look at this spot on, say, Base Ledger or another CCSM. And you can say, hey, watch for that. When something shows up in there, you're listening for it. Go do something, run the proof. If it validates, go do the thing you're supposed to do. That to me is actually more exciting and interesting when you combine it with all this other stuff than anything else, because now you're getting to real coordination. You're saying, oh, look, I don't have to do all this complicated stuff with my system. We're just going to use this common frame of reference to coordinate activity.
But I think it's also important to note that the example that you just described, that there needs to be a third party who is also interested that those.
No, it could be two
happen.
parties, right? You could say, again, Battleship. Watch for this location when my thing goes there that you're going to use to determine that I just said E4. You're going to respond, right? I don't have to set up a direct messaging to you. I can do it that way.
True. That is actually
that's Kafka.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. That's the argument for Kafka.
That's in this use case, you still have the state machine on a blockchain, right? Like Battleship, you have it on blockchain in the example that you described.
No, you're just running validators on each side.
True. But what you could
just drop in the proofs on the blockchain or on CCSM.
Yeah, right. In the end, you need to. Yeah, you're right. I was just thinking if there's another way to go around, but in the end, at the time you're playing, you need the zero knowledge proof.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to one of the companies really getting, maybe Base Ledger, maybe somebody else, really generating easy efficiency for messaging to another counterparty. Watch this spot.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you can do it because you can do it, right? I mean, it's addressing, but it's not. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to just have a tool for that, to say, okay, we're carving this location out. Watch for this spot, right? And then you can do all sorts of cool stuff. You could do dead drops, right? You can say, well, I need to know that this thing got shipped on time. This is a good one for your use case. I need to be sure of that. But I'm a competitor of the counterparty that's going to do the shipment. They shouldn't know about me and my business, but I need to be able to get the delivery date validated and that it was the correct date and it wasn't late, without them knowing a lot about me and my customer.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? You say, okay, you don't need to know about me. Drop when you do your thing, you deliver on time. Drop that proof of delivery in that spot. When I see it, you've dead dropped it. I'm going to take it. You don't need to know anything else. I just need that validated proof of delivery, on-time delivery. It's the same argument for how you do Kafka internally. Except instead of key value pairs, it's just keys.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks for this engaging discussion. And thank you so much, Martin, for joining us. You brought a lot to the show today, and you're always welcome to join our baseline shows in the future. Join as often as you can. And we also have Anton here from Mover. You got a little shout out in the chat. They're excited to see you, but nice to have you here. How's it going?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Sorry for being late, actually. I didn't want to interrupt the conversation between the guys. It's actually very interesting to I'm coming from a very practical side of things. There's been conversation around, I still remember when we joined, like I would say the baseline community before the new year. And I'm looking at things from a very practical perspective. So to me, hearing a lot of academic examples is very, very interesting. So I didn't want to interrupt that. And absolute pleasure. So ZK stuff is still very new for us. In a sense of how to implement it directly. But what John was describing now around the use case possibilities is actually very, very relevant to what we do. So I'd love to share more, but plenty of time to see some stuff going live in production as we're working on it.
Right on, Anton. You sure do have a lot of fans. People are pretty excited to see you.
It is what you just said is it's pretty challenging to make sure that things are economically viable. So we all know that sometimes crypto, right, can be a little bit I would say in the dreamland in terms of how the business economy is not viable. So as token emissions and everything out there subsidized for the business actions or for the users actions, but it's not sustainable. So when we're talking about real businesses doing real economies, real math, it becomes challenging, but it's also interesting to see how some use cases can now be possible for really interesting business models, specifically when we're talking about custodial things and non-custodial things, right? So in the compliance perspective, as like the more and more
knowing that you're being able to comply, that you're not dealing with Osama bin Laden, but not having to know that it's actually Jack Leahy, who's, by the way, a lot more scary. I mean,
absolutely. I think that's
you were right there. I was looking at you. I had to go for it.
It's really exciting. It's really exciting. Absolutely. It's a lot to do with changing the perspective of how businesses want to work. And also how you deal with a lot of existing regulations. For instance, ICO in the UK, you become basically, I would say, GDPR sort of slave as soon as you have an email from a customer that has their name and their email, not even to say that you want to do business with them. So it becomes a really, really neat and elegant solution on how to do business with other businesses and other customers, and sort of try to remain non-custodial. Yeah. And ZK is the best thing that's out there. So it's really interesting.
It's kind of like I often wonder, why do we knock our heads against the wall on this stuff? I mean, it's really hard. The blockchain thing is hard. Zero knowledge is hard. A lot of math, and I think it's because some folks, maybe the folks on this call, just can't resist an impossible puzzle. It's like, hey, we need to know exactly who you are, but we can't know anything about who you are. I mean, that's just delicious, right? I mean, it's like, oh, that's a conundrum. I like a conundrum.
It's funny, right? Because you may see some other people would say, like, why do you need this overhead? I mean, why don't you just know exactly who they are? Why don't you just keep all of that information? Why don't you just sort of become like fully regulated entity if we're talking about, let's say, finance kind of stuff, because that's the way the world operates. But
sometimes that's the right answer. We don't have to throw that baby out with the bathwater, right? I mean, knowing somebody. Correct. Somebody said something very smart. They're like, why are we spending so much time trying to create a world where we don't have to trust people? I mean, and there are reasons not to trust people, and there's efficiencies there. But I think he just kind of pointed out that you can go crazy with that and lose your head too.
That too. I think what keeps us sane is the economics of projects, right, and businesses we're trying to implement. There's two very specific cases out there, and it's very interesting again. So in the crypto world, the cost is irrelevant. It's about the ultimate opportunity of solving some major problem. Whereas again, repeating myself, in the real business, it is the cost. How much will it cost me to validate whatever you want you guys do? why do we need to do this? It's interesting to see how that's coming close to being reality. I think baseline so far, again, as I mentioned, we're at the beginning of the journey. So I've been playing quite a lot until we found the right use cases. So we're just on our path to trying to make sure it works. So
what do you think of that bus, the bus argument that I was making earlier? The magic, we used to call it the magic bus all the time. That was like our phrase. The baselining is like, the magic bus.
So it's interesting, again, as I said, because the way I look into all of this is from purely practical perspective, not from the academic perspective. So I think it's a very relevant example that you've shared about baseline being sort of like this this bus. Yeah. But then what I see, if I may add to that sort of example, this is again coming from the experience that I've had so far while trying to dig into and implement it. To me, the way I would compare or describe baseline is a relief, compliance relief actually, and it's again coming from non-custodial world. That's right now the only legal and legally correct and compliance correct solution to deal with traditional finance world. So to me, again, it's a compliance relief. So it's a bit different example, and I think I've been listening to other baseline, previous baseline shows, and I think I think nobody has ever said such words. It's like, oh, baseline is a compliance relief.
We've said it's audit tech. I mean, that there's no it's no surprise why an Ernst & Young would have been part of the creation of it. Is it kind of it would solve problems for them. Oddly though, it's the part of Ernst & Young that isn't in audit that started it up, right? And I keep on telling Paul Brody, I'm like, or John Brody, earlier joke, that I'm like, hey, this thing, what we've built is more relevant to your audit team even. And
Yep.
They're just a little slower on the draw, I think, over there.
It's sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
I think, Martin, that kind of goes back to what you were talking about, having that third party, and that's where there's assurance that comes in that organizations like EY can apply to that. That's just a huge opportunity, and came to mind when you were talking about that earlier, Martin.
Right. Hey, I see my grandfather clock just bonged at me, and that tells me that we're out of time. What a wonderful show. Nice, Jack. I love that.
I always got it in my backpack wherever I go.
Right on. Oh, yeah. Mine's on. I can't reach it. It's over there.
Yeah. Slapping it on random stop signs and.
I think we need a baseline bus Lego kit. I think that's the next thing. Baseline bus Lego kit.
Right.
You have to buy with NFTs, clearly. All right. We'll be at ETH Denver in 2 weeks. Show up on the 17th. They've got us on the 17th. I think we're asking for the 18th, but it'll be the 17th or the 18th. We'll be making big announcements there. Join us at the Tachyon tent at ETH Denver. I hope everybody's going. Get your Buffacorns. What is the hashtag? This is the Gway. Is that what? Yeah, that's it. It's going to be a fun time. And I remember I didn't go to ETH Denver, but 2 years ago. But if I had, I would have gotten COVID because everybody did. It was like the super spreader event for all of us. So it'll be really, I think this is the first year that we'll all be kind of coming out of that. I expect it's going to be a pretty good crowd. So, Jack, I think you guys are going, right?
Yeah, we'll be there. Yeah, and I was there, and fortunately I didn't get COVID in 2020.
Not that you know.
There nor Hyperledger. Those were kind of back to back, and
it doesn't. It only affects humans, not superheroes. So you're fine. Anton, are you Are you going to ETH Denver?
No. I'm a bit stuck here in the UK.
Right.
So maybe next event. So hopefully
Jack can send the provide jet. He can sneak you in. I'm joking.
just gonna catch. No, absolutely. But I'll definitely watch it online. It should be a really exciting one. I think that there's a lot of, I would say, pending sort of updates on. There's been a lot of innovation going around. So I think that's going to be the place to see some, as it's called, alpha.
Alpha, yeah. I wish I could get me some of that alpha, but I'm too square. I could buy a couple hubcaps off of a Lambo maybe. Great to see everybody, and it's time to go. Bye.
Thank you.